What kind of public transportation do you usually take?
I usually take the MRT because it's fast, clean, and incredibly efficient. When I need to travel shorter distances, I often take the bus since it stops closer to residential areas and small neighborhoods. Occasionally, if I'm in a rush or carrying heavy items, I use Grab or Gojek. Overall, public transportation in Singapore is so well connected that it's often faster than driving.
When do you usually take public transportation in your everyday life or when you are traveling?
I take public transportation almost every day, especially the MRT, for work or daily errands. It's convenient and saves me the trouble of finding parking, which is quite limited in Singapore. When I travel across the island, for example, from the west to Changi, I always rely on the MRT because it's comfortable and air-conditioned. Even on weekends, I prefer using public transport because it helps me avoid the stress of driving.
Do most people prefer public transportation in your country?
Yes, most people in Singapore rely heavily on public transportation because it's affordable, reliable, and extremely efficient. The system covers almost the entire island, so there's rarely a need to own a car. In fact, many people prefer taking MRT or buses because it saves money, especially with the high cost of car ownership. Public transport has become such a big part of life here that it's almost the default option.
Did you take public transportation when you were a kid?
Yes, I did. When I was younger, I used to take the bus to school almost every day. My parents wanted me to be more independent, so using public transport became part of my routine early on. I remember those times fondly because the rides were peaceful, and sometimes I met the same passengers every morning, which created a small sense of community.
Will there be more people taking public transportation in the future?
I think so, especially with the government continuously expanding the MRT network. New lines are being built to reduce travel time and make more neighborhoods accessible. With rising car prices and limited space for roads, public transportation will become an even more practical choice. So unless something drastically changes, more people will rely on buses and trains to get around easily.
How often do you take the bus?
I take the bus almost every day because Singapore's public transport is extremely reliable. The buses are clean, well maintained, and usually arrive right on time. I like the convenience. You can literally get anywhere with a single transfer. Even when the bus is crowded during rush hour, everything still runs like clockwork, so it helps me stay on track.
When was the first time you took a taxi?
I first took a taxi a few months ago when I was heading to an urgent appointment near Orchard. I was running a little late, so taking a taxi really saved my skin. I remember the driver being very friendly and giving me tips about different places in Singapore. Since then, I've realized how efficient taxi services are here.
What are the advantages of taking a taxi compared with buses?
One obvious advantage is flexibility. You can leave any time without waiting for the next bus. Taxis also drop you right at your exact destination, which is perfect when you're carrying heavy bags or going somewhere unfamiliar. They're also much faster, especially when you choose Grab or Gojek. For me, taxis are a real lifesaver when I'm pressed for time.
Is it convenient to take the bus or taxi in your city?
Yes, without a doubt. Singapore has one of the most efficient public transport systems in the world. Buses and taxis are easy to find, and the apps make everything super convenient. I normally take the bus because it's cheaper, but when I'm in a rush or it's raining heavily, I don't mind grabbing a taxi to make life easier.
Do you drive often?
No, I don't drive very often because owning a car in Singapore is extremely expensive. However, I rent a car occasionally using car-sharing services like Blue SG or GetGo. It's convenient when I need to run errands or travel late at night. Driving gives me a sense of freedom, like I'm calling the shots.
Do you want your children to drive in the future?
Yes, I do. Even though driving is costly in Singapore, I still think it's an important life skill. It teaches responsibility and helps people become more independent. In emergencies, knowing how to drive can really save the day.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yes, I do. I obtained my license after completing lessons at a driving center here. It took time and effort, but it was worth it. I still remember how nervous I was during the test, but once I passed, it felt like a huge milestone.
At what age are people allowed to drive in your country?
In Singapore, people can start learning to drive at 18 and take the test around that age. It's considered old enough to handle the responsibility. Most people start taking lessons right after finishing school.
Do you think it's difficult to drive a car?
At first, it can be a bit challenging, especially with Singapore's strict driving rules. But once you get used to it, driving becomes second nature, just like riding a bike. The roads are well marked and organized, so it actually gets easier over time.
Do you like to travel by car?
Yes, I enjoy traveling by car because it gives me more control over my schedule. Singapore is small, so driving anywhere doesn't take very long. Plus, the roads are smooth and well planned, which makes the ride comfortable. On hot days, it's nice to sit in an air-conditioned car rather than sweating it out at a bus stop.
When do you travel by car?
I usually travel by car when I'm going somewhere outside the MRT network or when I have multiple stops. Cars are especially useful at night when public transport hours are limited. Sometimes, I also rent a car to explore lesser-known spots like Seletar or the nature parks. It just makes the whole outing a walk in the park.
Where is the farthest place you have traveled by car?
Because Singapore is small, the farthest I've traveled by car within the country is probably from Jurong to Changi. But I've taken car trips to Malaysia, like Johor Bahru and Malacca. Those road trips can take several hours, but they're fun and full of little surprises along the way. It really turns the journey into half the adventure.
Do you like to sit in the back or front when traveling by car?
I prefer sitting in the front seat, whether I'm driving or not. The view is much better, and I like keeping an eye on the road. Sitting in front makes me feel more aware and involved in the trip. It also helps prevent motion sickness, so it's a win-win.
Do you often travel by boat?
No, not very often. In Singapore, we don't use boats for daily transport unless we're going to places like Pulau Ubin or St. John's Island. It's more of a recreational activity than a necessity. So for me, boat trips are more of a once-in-a-while experience.
Have you ever been on a boat during a holiday?
Yes, I've taken a ferry to Pulau Ubin and to some nearby islands. It was a fun trip because the journey itself felt refreshing. The sea breeze and open views made the holiday feel more relaxing. It was a great way to switch off from city life.
Have you ever been on a boat tour while on holiday?
Yes, I've tried a short boat tour around Marina Bay before. It was interesting because you get a different view of Singapore's skyline from the water. The guide shared stories about the landmarks, which made the ride even more enjoyable. It was a simple experience, but it hit the spot.
Would you like to go on a boat tour?
Absolutely. I'd love to try a longer cruise, maybe to places like Thailand or Vietnam. A sea journey sounds relaxing and adventurous at the same time. My friends told me the cruises from Singapore are amazing, so it's definitely on my bucket list.
Would you like to have a holiday on a boat?
Yes, I would. Having a holiday on a boat feels like a unique experience. Great views, nice food, and endless activities. Plus, you get to wake up in different places every morning. It's a great way to unplug and recharge.
Where in your country do people most often use boats?
People mainly use boats to reach offshore islands like Pulau Ubin, Kusu Island, or St. John's Island. These places are popular for nature trails, beaches, and family outings. Other than that, boating is mostly for leisure rather than daily travel.
Do many people in your country own their own boat?
Not really. Owning a boat in Singapore is very expensive, and most people don't have the space to keep one. Usually only hobbyists or people with private yacht memberships own boats. For the average person, it's just not worth the hassle.
Would you like to buy a boat?
No, I wouldn't. Boats require a lot of maintenance and cost a fortune to keep. I prefer just renting a boat or joining a tour if I want the experience. It's easier, cheaper, and less headache.
If you had your own boat, what would you do with it?
If I had one, I'd probably take weekend trips to nearby islands and enjoy some quiet time by the water. I'd also invite friends for short cruises to relax and hang out. It would be a great way to escape the busy city life and recharge my batteries.